We have been talking about a softening used tractor market this year, but there's another major test of the market coming this week with several auctions on the schedule across the country. And crude oil prices are going up, and so are gas prices at the pump. Why? We'll find out.
Live from the glorious beginning of a brand new week via Farm Journal broadcast, this is AgriTalk. This morning we begin with a conversation with Machinery Pete, that's Greg Peterson. Then it's Phil Flynn from the Price Futures Group, and directly following the news, Brett Waltz from BAM WX. I'm the handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now, here's the host of AgriTalk, Chip Flory.
All right, Davis. Hey, thank you so much. You know, we say this from time to time on the show. Sometimes it's okay to be lucky when we're scheduling a guest, and lucky we were in getting Phil Flynn on the show for this morning, because here we are. Crude oil prices, RBOB prices, moving to the upside. I think gas prices, gas futures anyway, are making new contract highs this morning, dude.
Yeah. We'll talk about it just a little bit off the top of the news here. I'm looking at, let's just go with the front month WTI crude oil, up 63 already at 81.67. Out to the July, we're still at 80.
Yeah. So we'll find out from Phil what is going on there.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel, you know, so often in the crude oil market, you can say, well, of course, it's going up because of what's happening in Ukraine. It's going up because of what's happening in the Middle East. It doesn't feel that simple this time. You know, it feels like there is more happening in this energy market than just the headlines and what's on the surface. So we'll find out from Phil what's going on in here, okay?
Great. That sounds like a great idea. Timely.
And wait until you hear what Greg Peterson stumbled across.
Uh-oh.
Oh, my gosh. You guys, this is crazy what we are going to learn about from Machinery Pete coming up here in just a little bit. It is fantastic. And he's got a YouTube video out there and everything, so he can prove it. He can prove that this collection actually exists.
Well, that's the thing. In this day and age, if it doesn't show up on the internet, did it really happen? You know?
Exactly. Exactly. All right, buddy, let's get to the news. What do you got?
I'm going to start with the National Weather Service weather outlook. They've got a few rounds of lake effect snow forecast downwind of the Great Lakes over the next few days. Hello, South Bend. Cold morning temperatures bring a frost/freeze risk to parts of the Mid-South and Southeast on Tuesday. Record-breaking warmth continues across the Pacific Northwest and northern Great Basin. I'm at 29 degrees and sunny here in the city of Kansas this morning.
Yeah, 25 degrees in northeast Iowa. It's chilly, dude.
Yeah, a little chilly. Well, as we were talking about, Brent crude futures surged toward $86 per barrel, reaching their highest level since early November. This uptrend continued from the previous week, fueled by growing geopolitical tensions that heightened concerns about oil supply. Chip, meanwhile, cocoa futures rose to a fresh record in New York. Prices have doubled in less than 3 months. There are those outside markets headed for the upside again. Yeah,
exactly. The big question that I'm going to get to with Phil is inflation. Is inflation starting to surge again?
Well, a new FT Chicago Booth poll found that 2/3 of those surveyed believe the Fed will make 2 or fewer interest rate cuts this year as the U.S. central bank struggles to complete the last mile of its battle with inflation. The most popular response for the timing of the first cut was split between July and September, Chip.
Yeah, it maybe 2, maybe 1.
Since 2001, which marked the start of an era in which U.S. governments sharply expanded the use of economic sanctions, the U.S. dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves held by central banks dropped from 73% to 59%, this according to the International Monetary Fund. Gulf nations are beginning to settle oil trades in the Chinese yuan, and other commodity producers are considering similar shifts. Chip, just a fun fact here, every 100 days, the government debt grows by $1 trillion.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason is because And boy, this is a discussion that we need to have in depth at some point. But part of the reason for the growing debt is, well, number one, Congress likes to spend money. Number two, we're financing global trade.
Right.
If they all of a sudden somebody else wants to start going into debt to finance global trade, hello
Sure.
China. Well, that's something that maybe we should look at.
Yeah. In other news, expiration of Trump-era tax breaks in 2025 is set to significantly increase federal tax liabilities for farmers. This, according to USDA economists. The changes are expected to affect 97.6% of family farms, with the largest farms facing the greatest income tax liability increases in terms of dollars. North Dakota pipeline regulators will convene on today to determine a schedule for hearings regarding the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline project, this according to the North Dakota Monitor. The agenda also includes a request to reconsider a previous decision on pipeline zoning ordinances. European natural gas futures surged by around 8%, nearing $29, marking the fourth consecutive session of gains and hitting the highest level since early February. The spike driven by mounting concerns over supply shortages. And finally, Chip, China's industrial production surged by 7% year-on-year during Jan-Feb 2024, outpacing December 2023's growth of 6.8% and surpassing market expectations of 5%. This marked the quickest growth in nearly 2 years, Chip, primarily fueled by strong performances in manufacturing. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Davis. Let's bring in Brett Waltz, BAMWX.com. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, Chip.
Okay. It's cool here. 25 degrees this morning in northeast Iowa. It looks like that's the trend now through the end of the month, right?
Yeah, there can still be some up and downs, mainly across the eastern portions of the Ag Belt, but I really think into the month of March from now until then, and probably the first week or two of April, it's going to be cooler than normal. And, wintry weather chances, that's going to be back on the table as well, as you all mentioned earlier. So already starting to get some of that lake effect up to the north.
Yeah. Yeah. More active in the weather patterns. I mean, are we heading back for a white end of the month?
It's possible, especially to the north, the northern plains, upper Midwest, maybe even up by you in northern Iowa. I do think starting late this weekend to the weekend, and then as we work through the first half of next week, multiple chances of snow up there. Certainly need the moisture for some of those areas still under drought conditions, but maybe not as welcome that it's coming in the form of snow instead of rain.
Right, exactly. What's going on down in South America that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, for sure. So as we kind of talked about last week, I think April needs to be watched carefully for some hotter and drier risk in Mato Grosso do Sul. With that being said, I do think the last 10 days of March, there is a window of opportunity for some needed moisture across those areas. Central Brazil, including Mato Grosso do Sul, where it could be a little bit drier further south for a time across northeastern Argentina. That flips, though, as we work into April. I think that the tap could shut off there across central Brazil.
Okay. All right. Obviously going to need to pay close attention to those trends as well. Brett, thank you, buddy. We appreciate you, man.
Yep. Thank you, Chip.
You bet. Brett Waltz, BAMWX.com. Coming up next, Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete. Good grief. The stuff this guy finds. You're not going to believe this one. We'll find out from Greg next here on AgriTalk.
Machinery Pete here, folks. This segment of AgriTalk brought to you by our friends at Dakota Ag Innovations, makers of Dakota Shine, the best way I've seen to fix faded paint. Go to dakotashine.com or call 888-996-7801.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. Glad that you are with us on this Monday morning, which means it's time for a conversation with Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete. How you doing, Greg?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well, Chip. How are you doing this Monday?
I cannot wait for this conversation. You
like that? Some of those notes I sent, huh?
Yeah, the things you run across. Good grief. We'll get to it. We'll get to the details. But First things first, right? Let's start with Pete's pick of the week. What do you got?
Well, it was a tough choice. We had so much fun stuff coming up for sale and so many interesting items that sold this past week. I decided to go with something I really don't run across too often, but caught my eye. Sold Saturday up in Ottawa, Ohio. My good friend Aaron Siefker Real Estate and Auction Company, had a big sale up there. A couple rings, and the item that caught my eye was a 2018 New Holland Stack Cruiser 102 bale wagon.
Okay.
300 hours like new condition, sold for $165,000. Guess I've always just enjoyed running across those bale wagons, whether they're late model like this, big huge ones, or some of the older ones, the 1049 New Holland, stuff like that. But yeah, 165. Thought that was pretty interesting, and they did have some nice tractors on the same sale, Chip. They had a 1997 John Deere 8100 with just over 2,000 hours. It went for 103,000. It's tied for the sixth highest price ever at auction on an 8100. 2010 John Deere 8225R, so pre-def, 1,066 hours, low hours. That brought 176. That was the seventh highest price ever. Another tractor, a 2013 John Deere 6140R, just under 880 hours. No loader, just a tractor. That went for 109, tied for the eighth highest price. So good condition used tractors there. Not all setting records like they were maybe 6, 12, 18 months ago, but still, doing very well out there.
Right. I'll admit I had to get on the Google machine and find out what that Stack Cruiser was all about.
Yeah, it is a cool rig. And folks in New Holland there specializing in all kinds of hay equipment for so many decades, helping farmers do what they got to do. And you got a whole lot of bales, those big bale wagons, man. They'll get you where you got to go.
Yep. And there it is over in the Eastern Corn Belt. Now, something like that in Kansas, Nebraska, Western Iowa, even Missouri makes sense to me. But all the way over there in the Eastern Belt, that's a lot of hay and forage moving equipment right there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's partly why that kind of caught my eye. Like you, I was like, did a little double take on the geography but my friend Aaron there up in Ottawa, Ohio, that's an interesting area there. I've told people when I get out there that northwest corner of Ohio, if I charted our machinery repeat auction price data for 34 and a half years, I'm telling you, is right about the top. Of course,
really?
Owner operated, shedded, guys, great operations there. But it's always interesting where the stuff sells for sure. Yeah,
no doubt. Okay, let's go a little bit further north, up into Ontario. What do you got?
Yeah, the day before, last Friday in Keedy, Ontario, an interesting auction. It was by Keedy Auctioneering Service. And actually, there was a record tractor price on this one, a John Deere 8310R. Only had 432 hours, so we would expect that it would sell for a premium, which it certainly did. Went for 350,000 Canadian, which when you do the math, which is like 73% now or whatever. U.S. dollars, it was $258,856. That's the highest auction price I've ever seen on the E310R.
Wow.
Also had a low hour John Deere 7810. That was always attract a lot of interest. Only had 1,237 hours mechanical front. That brought 158 Canadian, so 116,855 U.S. That's the 11th highest price ever. The combine sold pretty well, I thought, too, Chip. A little older, an F680 Deere. Low hours, though, 403 SEP hours, went for 277.5 Canadian. So U.S. dollars, it was just over 2,300. That's the third highest in the last 18 months on the S680. So nice stuff up there last Friday in Ontario.
Yeah. If we're looking for a trend and looking for evidence that tractor prices are softening up here a bit, we may have seen that evidence, but it doesn't feel like we're seeing evidence that it's continuing into the year, Greg.
Yeah. Good condition used, even through the ups and downs over the 3.5 decades I've been doing this. Good condition used is still going to attract a premium. It's just a question of is the premium going to be a double premium on fire like we saw the last 3 years? Sometimes it's like that. But even if I go back to 2014, 2015, maybe one of the weakest periods I've ever seen for used farm equipment values. Still, I remember standing at a sale in Illinois watching a Magnum 8940 bring $88,000. So, the good condition used stuff in some ways, particularly now because of the new stuff. I mean, we always used to figure new was going up 4% a year. Now that's kind of quaint. I mean, it's just skyrocketed in cost. Yeah. We're down in Houston, you and I at Commodity Classic, looking at that new tractor, that Deere 9RX there for $1.3 million. That makes $450,000. It's still crazy high, but not less than $1.3 million. Put it that way.
It makes it seem affordable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all relative, brother.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, here's something a little different in today's environment. If you want a piece of equipment at this auction down in Palmyra, you're going to have to get on the road and get there.
Well, yeah, Friday, my great friends at Wheeler Auctions and Real Estate, they're having an on-site live dealer auction for SN Partners, Side & Stricker Noble, great John Deere dealer. It is a live in-person auction. Now, of course, they do have online bidding. They've got 3 platforms. Okay. Just go to WheelerAuctions.com. You can hop on there, folks. But it was interesting. Right before I hopped on the radio here with you, Chip, I'm posting on Facebook an interview I did with Kirby Feck, a manager there with Wheeler Auctions and Real Estate, talking about the sale. Tons of late model equipment, late model planters, folks. My gosh, 22 and 23 models, combines, tractors. Check it out at WheelerAuctions.com. But what's interesting, Kirby mentioned that he and Chaz Wheeler, legend in the auction business, they are firm believers in the power of the live in-person auction. We got talking. This might, I think, be the first live on-site dealer auction since the start of the pandemic. Wow. This is a big sale, folks. Palmyra, Missouri. I'll be there on Friday. Sale starts at 11, and they're having a special brunch at 9:30. Eddie Seidenstricker will be there. Of course, legend in the business. Everybody loves Eddie, the old Cajun Queen pulling tractor. So, come on, join us in Palmyra. And
cool.
Kirby told me they got all the equipment on site now, and I asked him, I said, well, where do you go for lunch in Palmyra if you're looking at the equipment? And he smiled. He goes, go down to the Rebel Pig barbecue smokehouse joint. So that was a recommendation from my friend Kirby. So we're going to have fun Friday in Palmyra.
Perfect. All right. Tell us about this auction that's happening in Kingsley, Iowa.
Unbelievable, folks. Thursday, March 28th. It's by Paulson Auction, paulsonauction.com, Paulsen. I'm telling you what, it's unbelievable. You maybe saw the YouTube video posted the other day. I went down to Kingsley, Iowa last week, did a preview. But the owner, Rob Plendel, he has 10 John Deere 55 Series tractors. And I mean to tell you, they are beautiful. He's got one 4055, one 4255, and then a pair of all the other 55 series. So he's got two 44s, 4455s, 5555s, 4755s, and a pair of 4955s, a two-wheel and mechanical each. New tires, and I mean, they just look like new. And it was a joy to get down and see Rob again. He had an auction, another collector auction 5 years ago in Kingsley, Iowa, where he sold older, like high 40/20 high crops and John Deere 60/30s.
Yep.
And he's just, he's a hunter for these classic tractors. Crazy. And the sale again is March 28th. It's gonna be a hot one, so I can't wait to see how that plays out.
And he's got quite an offering on the Mecum auctions too, doesn't he?
Well, it's unbelievable. So we're going down the line of 10 John Deere 55 series. My eyes are as wide as they get. And then he offhandedly mentions, Pete, I've also got 25 black Chevys vehicles selling April 5th on Mecum's auction. And we put that in the preview video, folks. If you love black Chevy vehicles with low miles, Rob has got Dreamland for you.
You have got to check it out. Good grief. It is wild. Greg, good stuff, buddy. We'll talk to you later. Greg Peterson, Machine Repeat.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from Pro Farmer.
Joining us now, Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady. Beej, it kind of all over the place here this morning, but wheat is trying to lead to the upside. What's going on?
Yeah, interesting. I was going to say all over the place, and so nice lead in there. But the wheat market traded pretty solidly to the upside overnight. More Black Sea attacks during the weekend. Cold weather here to kick off the week across the central U.S. and down into the southeast, and so that's given winter wheat markets some support. The corn market, it's been valiant on both sides of unchanged because soybeans are under pressure. So strength from wheat, pressure from soybeans, and corn kind of pivoting around unchanged.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, and soybean oil is under some pressure today, 80 points lower, and soybean meal is trying to trade to the upside in here. So, kind of an uncertain start to the week. There's no question about that. Let's go over to livestock trade. We've got some buying interest in the cattle complex.
Yeah, definite firmer tone there. So we'll call moderate gains at mid-morning here in the live cattle market. Last week, we're still waiting on the average price from USDA, but it could challenge the all-time high from last summer. So we'll see where that comes out later this morning. Feeder cattle, they're pushing to the upside, even stronger gains there than what is seen in live cattle. And so good solid morning of trade so far in the cattle complex. We do have cattle on feed report from USDA coming up on Friday afternoon, so keep that in mind with regards to cash trade. And then the hog market mildly favoring the upside here as the cash market continues to work higher seasonally.
Gotcha. All right, good stuff, Brian. Thank you. That is Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady on Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. We've cleared the schedule for you. Give us a call at 855-482-5524 and join the conversation.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. Boy, go to machinerepeat.com, find the link to his latest YouTube reports, and get on there and take a look at the Chevy shed. And it's pretty incredible find that Greg stumbled across out there. Okay, RBOB prices, gasoline futures, making new highs this morning. Crude oil up over $80. Phil Flynn is the energy analyst at Price Futures Group, and he joins us right now. Phil, it's great to talk with you again. How are you?
It's great to be here. I'm telling you, at a time when gasoline prices are going through the roof, but it's good to be here. But as I always say, Chip, the first sign of spring is gasoline prices going up. So we've got that going for us, right?
So here it is. If that is a sign of spring, it is definitely spring because it's got everybody's attention now, Phil. Gas prices have reached levels that it's hard to ignore what's going on there.
It really is. And it's one of the things I've been concerned about. I think people have been taking low gasoline prices for granted. Mm-hmm. I think they've been taking, low oil prices for granted and low diesel prices for granted. And, part of the problem I've seen, Chip, is we get these reports from these international energy agency, for example, that keeps telling us, we've got plenty of supplies, demand's going to be really bad. But when that doesn't happen and the market reacted to it, you get this big slap in the face. And we're seeing that at the gas pump today.
Yeah. Okay. So why? The highest crude oil prices since the end of October happening right now. Why?
I think it's a couple of things. Number one, everybody was predicting a recession and they were betting on lower prices. So people didn't invest as much in oil and gas and everybody took it for granted. I think number two, you're seeing the most significant risk to global oil supplies that we've seen since the Arab oil embargo. I mean, what's going on in the Red Sea on a daily basis? The market tries to ignore that, but that has a real cost. When you see oil tankers potentially at risk, when they have to delay shipments, when you're seeing refineries get attacked in Russia, right, where you're going to see a shortage of diesel supplies, all of these things are starting to take its toll. And the one thing is the death of oil demand that everybody predicted was going to happen a few years ago. We're all going to be driving electric cars. People are starting to wake up to reality. That's not going to happen. And the reality, of course, is going to cost us more money.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about that gasoline consumption. Before we spend some more time on the supply side, let's go over to the demand side. What are the trends in consumption looking like right now, Phil?
The death of gasoline demand in the internal combustion engine has been greatly exaggerated. I mean, on a weekly basis, oil demand's back above 9 million barrels a day. And there's no doubt that, electric cars have displaced some of that. But a lot of people had predicted, especially the Biden administration, that when they force-fed, electric cars down the mouths of the American public by putting new regulations on internal combustion engine, that somehow everybody would buy these cars. And no matter how many billions they threw at the automotive industry of our taxpayer dollars to make these cars, they're pulling back. Because nobody wants these cars. They're not efficient. And as much as the government wants to force them to have it. Now, there's a report that the Biden administration is going to double down and try to put more regulations to try to make us like these cars. I don't think it's going to work, but definitely one of the reasons why we're seeing prices go up.
Yeah. Supposedly this week at some point, EPA is going to come with another set of incentives to move people over to EVs and hybrids. And I don't know if that's going to work or not. So demand is stronger than what was anticipated. The recession that was so well advertised didn't happen. On the supply side, the U.S. continues to produce like crazy, right?
They do, but a far cry from where they should be. And the reason why I say that, everybody says, oh, look at, the U.S. oil and gas industry. They're producing a record amount of oil. You see all those predictions that Biden's regulations wouldn't hurt U.S. oil production. They're looking at a microcosm. What you have to realize is that the investment in oil and gas that brought us to record production happened years ago. Okay, there's a lag effect, right? And what we're seeing is the replacement of declining production isn't happening. And we're hearing that from everybody. We're hearing it from OPEC. We're even hearing it from the Energy Information Administration. And these Pollyanna predictions, that we were going to stop driving cars aren't coming true. So now the market's facing up to reality that, hey, we're going to need fossil fuels and we haven't invested enough money. And now we could be in an era of much higher prices because of the short-sightedness of some of these pushes towards green energy.
So what are you watching for then on the production side if the policies that are in place start to sunset and we move toward lower production? What exactly are you going to be watching?
I'm going to be looking at how many of the smaller producers, how they're able to survive in this new regulatory environment. I think what you're going to see is a lot of these smaller producers start to go belly up. If they start pushing some of these new methane regulations, the heart and soul of the U.S. oil and gas industry are these smaller producers, these shale producers. These companies you don't hear a lot about, but they really provide the backbone of U.S. oil and gas production. And the way things are going right now, these regulatory push that these new rules they're going to be putting in place is going to make it very, very difficult for them to survive. And when that doesn't happen, U.S. oil production is going to peak. We're going to become more reliant on OPEC and Russia for supplies. And that seems to be the direction that we're headed.
Okay. Well, And you can regulate your way into a whole bunch of inflation too, can't you?
I think we're already seeing that, aren't we? Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, part of what we're seeing in the inflation front that people don't talk about, and I'm glad you did, because we're regulating a lot of inflation, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you put more burden on business, more regulatory burden, there's a cost. You have to hire lawyers, you have to go through paperwork, you're not doing your real job, and that adds to the cost of the final product, and that is a big number in the inflation that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. It's the trends. The trends are not encouraging for the average consumer out there right now when we talk about gasoline and home heating energy. Electricity is getting more expensive, Phil.
It is, and you have an administration right now that's trying to electrify everything, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds like a great idea, but when you look at the reality of how this electricity is going to be produced, when we put more burden, on the infrastructure, it's going to take trillions of dollars to get the infrastructure in place to electrify everything in the country.
Yeah.
And this push away from natural gas buildings to electric cars, everybody getting rid of their gas powered stove. The return on investment is minuscule when it comes to its impact on the environment, but the impact on the average person, what they have to pay for a home, what they have to pay to heat their house, is going through the roof. And somebody's got to step up and say, stop the madness. There's a better way to do this. And that's one of the things that I want to continue to get out there. There's a better way. We can still save the planet and not bankrupt everybody at the same time.
Yeah, there's a few of you that are doing that, and I appreciate it every time I see it, Phil, that you get on the soapbox and scream, stop the madness. But I don't know if it's going to do any good. Not when you look at what's happening in Europe with natural gas prices right now. Good grief. You talk about regulating our way out of a market. If we're not going to export natural gas out of the U.S. into Europe, they're going to struggle forever.
They really are. And we should look at that as a model of what not to do, right? Germany shut down its nuclear power plants. They wanted to outlaw natural gas. Now they're realizing, hey, wait a second, we're going to need energy, right? They've seen their factories leave the country because the cost of energy is too high. They're losing jobs. They're losing gross domestic product. And with what positive impact for the environment? None. Places like Russia are going to be producing dirtier oil, places like Venezuela, and it really has led to global instability. I think a big part of what's going on with Russia, and their aggressiveness towards the Ukraine really is the underneath it all is power. And I think Russia realizes if you can control the energy, you control a lot of power.
Yeah, well, the geopolitical risks around the globe right now are significant, and the risk is even greater going forward if China decides to try to unify and bring Taiwan back.
And no kidding, and that's going to be another big issue. Listen, I mean, there's no doubt the globe is a scary place right now. And whenever that happens, and when you start disrupting transportation, the risk to goods and the energy have always been very, very inflationary. So stay tuned.
Yeah. You know what? We waited way too long. When I saw this happening, I waited way too long to get you on here, Phil. We need to have more conversation. So we'll be in touch, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Chip.
All right. That is Phil Flynn, Price Futures Group. All right. Davis and I will be back to wrap up this week's first hour of AgriTalk in a moment.
AgriTalk is brought to you by John Deere. For generations before and generations to come, John Deere is part of your farm and your family. Whatever your technology needs, John Deere has the tools to help grow your farm. And welcome back to AgriTalk, everybody. Your pal, Davis Michelson, here on a Monday morning for you. Chip Flory is somewhere around here. Chip?
I'm here.
You got him?
Right here.
We got him.
Right here.
We got him. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
It's all good.
Very good. Yeah. How was the weekend?
It's fantastic.
Yeah? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if you saw or not, but Iowa State Cyclones won the Big 12 men's basketball tournament.
Oh, they did.
They did. I don't know if people noticed, paid any attention to that or not, but little known fact that Iowa State Cyclones won the Big 12 basketball tournament.
Yeah. Awful quiet about it down here. Not a word about it.
Really?
I don't even know if there was a game. Yeah.
Kansas City loves Iowa State, and Iowa State loves Kansas City.
I will say I have seen a number of, a decent amount of Cyclone paraphernalia being trotted around the streets here in greater Kansas City.
I would imagine. The town looked like it was absolutely full of Iowa Staters. At some point in my life, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for the whole week, maybe for the 2 weeks. Take in the women's tournament, take in the men's tournament. At some point in my life, that's going to happen. But for now, it was my favorite recliner, watching the games.
Yep.
And holy smokes, what a game that was against Houston in the championship game.
Well, let me just tell you, the good folks of Kansas City and of the T-Mobile Center will open their arms wide. Come on down for a big old KC hug, buddy.
Good.
Anytime.
Good. I'm looking forward to that. Yep.
Anytime at all. Speaking of cyclones, probably cyclone weather may be off the table for a few weeks here. Brett Waltz seems to think it's going to be cooler for the rest of March.
Yeah.
Perhaps even into the 1st of April here.
Yeah.
But the soil isn't frozen up there where you are, right, Chip?
Oh, no.
I'm thinking about, everybody's all excited. Ooh, early spring. It's going to be warm. It's going to be great. We're going to get out there.
Yep.
I mean, I guess as long as the ground doesn't freeze. Yeah.
The ground is fit and ready to go.
Yeah.
The problem is it's March 18th.
Right.
And we've got some cold weather that's in the forecast, and we've got some precipitation that is in the forecast. Now, we knew. I shouldn't say we knew. It was widely suspected that we would get to another pattern change before we got to April. And here it comes. We're into it right now, and we'll see just how active it is. The temperatures I get, and I can see the trends and the reason for that trend. I can see that. But on the precip side, National Weather Service, I think, is a little bit more aggressive than the private forecasters at this point on bringing precip in to the middle of the country. So we'll see which pattern plays out here. But Davis, could we go from talking about this early start and can you believe how good conditions are, and oh my gosh, we could be planting beans in March. Could we go from that to, here we are, the middle of April, still got this wet pattern in place? I don't know. It could. It's something that could happen.
Well, and maybe an opportunity to catch up on some sales, perhaps too, if we get a little bump there. You make the trade nervous with some rain, and although they don't get nervous about rain anymore, right? It's always rain makes grain is the thing. That's my concern.
You would think you would think that would be how the market would trade it, but I don't know. A little bit of a rally based on a wet pattern this spring, I think would you nailed it when you said it would be an opportunity.
Yep.
It would be a selling opportunity. I don't think there's any question about that.
My takeaway from the conversation with Phil Flynn, it was fantastic. The ROI, the return on investment for the consumer, for society at large, it's just not there for I think he was speaking specifically of EV stuff, but also sort of the larger efforts toward greenifying our world. The return on investment just isn't there, man.
Yeah.
It makes life more expensive. It doesn't do anything.
If it had an obvious impact, something that people that are driving an electric vehicle, that are driving an electric vehicle, could look into the sky and see improvement and say, you know what, that's because of me. Doggone it, I feel good. But that doesn't happen.
No.
That doesn't. You don't get the immediate gratification of an EV purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's fun to drive. Got lots of torque. I get that.
Yep. Smugness. You carry around a little smugness with you. Why not?
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good. But as far as it providing that incentive on, see, look what you've done. Look at the good that you're doing.
Right.
That's hard to identify, isn't it?
Well, it is. Our attention spans aren't what they ought to be here, at least in the United States. I mean, that instant gratification, that's what we're all about, bro.
About it, baby.
That's just how we are. And when you don't
especially
get that,
if you're the NCAA men's basketball tournament selection committee.
Oh, here we go.
Because I think what they decided to do was say, okay, let's take the West and put all the tournament champs into that bracket, into that and that way you don't really have to worry about the other ones. You got all the tournament champs right there. We'll just let's focus on that one and we'll see who comes out of there.
2 teams enter, 1 team leaves.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. There is a lot of complaining about that West bracket out there. You got to beat them all anyway. You got to beat them all to get to the goal.
That's true.
If you're going to, you might as well put them all in one bracket. Let's stand them up and knock them down. Here we go.
Well
Tournament time is here. Go Cyclones. Come back this afternoon. We're going to have a conversation about cattle and cattle marketing. Chris Swift, Swift Trading Company.